Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L, and we're here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter 428. I know I screwed up the numbers for the last video I did, but yeah, this video will probably just go over 428 and 427. Alright, so where do we begin, really? Well, we're in the end, what is there really worth talking about? There's not a lot, it's a pretty chill time. For these last few reviews of Hero Academia, I guess I'll just point out anything that's really cool, but we'll mostly be talking about meta things, I think, because now it's just, you're pretty much seeing the way that Horikoshi goes about ending a story. On that note, I think one of the best things to keep in mind, and just to really remind yourself when it comes to the manga authors in Shonen Jump, every manga author in Shonen Jump has more experience with continuing a story than they do with ending stories. It's really with the Shonen Jump authors, their best shot, especially if you're someone like Oda, is to hope that you hone your ability to end a story by practicing when you end your story arcs. And with Oda, it's a little bit different because each island is its own little story there, right? So that's what we're looking at here. I think a lot of the deficiencies that you could find in this epilogue are largely just from lack of experience. For me, I have no experience ending stories either. I have theory on it. I have theory on it. But the thing that I think is happening here is that Horikoshi cares about the state of the world almost equal, if not more, than he does about the resolution for the students. Because usually epilogues, you would just be seeing, the characters in a happy state, and you're getting that for a lot of characters. It just feels like to some degree you're not seeing it for the critical characters, mind you. It's a case-by-case basis, because you look at Shoto and it's I personally don't think that Shoto really got a solid ending. I think Endeavor gets a very solid ending. The quality of the ending for Endeavor, and when you look at Shoto's quality in that, it doesn't feel the same, right? But I think that's largely because the kids are just kids, and I think Horikoshi has a bias there. I think when I look at Izuku right now looks like he's about to become a very multifaceted character. But Izuku on the way here felt a lot like a passenger, and heck man, even when you look at Dobby and Endeavor, which is the most compelling story in terms of just how much things are going into it, Izuku is unable to really say anything to that situation other than, no, Endeavor's a good guy, right? So to some degree, I think that's what you kind of end up seeing here. When you look at people saying that this might be boring, I think part of it is just the students themselves are not that compelling, so it makes it very hard to actually work with them. Ironically, because we're about to talk about 428, Ochako is probably the most compelling here. And why is Ochako compelling? Because her villain was... Heck no, because even with Shoto's villain should have been very compelling to him as on a personal level, but because Endeavor was involved, Endeavor took up so much of the story power on that one. And heck, Shoto is just this guy that never really knew him. All he knows is that he shares blood with Toya, and that they share a legacy of being Endeavor's #1 student and that kind of stuff. But Shoto himself doesn't really have that big of a connection to Dobby. That's why that when he talks about what's your favorite soba, he has to start there because he has no other foot to stand on when it comes to Dobby and Shoto. Really, the soba line is indicative of how little they have together. But when you come to Toga and Ochako, those two have been fully aware of each other from the very get-go. Toga's overly interested in Ochako, Ochako's overly interested in Toga. You actually, Ochako is the Endeavor in that situation, which is why she has a very compelling final bit here, I would say. But yeah, I would say overall, if there is a reception online that's saying that, hey, this is kind of low energy, I feel there's a lot of little factors going into it, but fundamentally I think it's because Horikoshi cares a lot about his world, more so than he does the characters, unless it's select few. And Ochako is thankfully one of those select few. Also on that point, I want to say I think the Spinner stuff was amazing. I think Spinner was done very, very well. I know some people agree with me on that one, but I think Spinner was done very well. It's unfortunate that the biggest losers in this war were the villains, and hey, I say this a lot on the streams, but I think we have to be honest with ourselves. Horikoshi, which hero died in this arc? Which named hero died? I don't think any of them died. I think Horikoshi was 100%, look, bro, I'm just gonna kill the villains and kill them in the most humiliating ways possible that I can find. It was quite eye-opening when commenter White Despair points out the only villain that succeeded in their immediate goal was Spinner, and it's like, that says a lot. That's probably why he survived, and that's probably why he's gonna be a comic artist. Although at that point, he's just signing up for more suffering, right? But you know, it's a really good point. One of the biggest lies in this series is that the heroes were outgunned. Bro, I really feel like one trained hero is worth 10 regular villains. If you don't have an AoE villain, or if you don't have a cloner type villain, you're nothing, right? The heroes really took on hard mode when they were doing this war, because the amount of heroes that were just sitting around, walking through woods, or like just keeping an eye on civilians, bro. The heroes were never hard pressed on this. You cannot say the heroes went all out on this one. Nedzu, with his like endless pockets, he was able to. Okay, you know what? We could talk about this all the time. Like, this is a whole other point about like what the author wants to sell you on that's not actually reflective in the story when you look at the end result. It's really fun to talk about. I really enjoy that kind of stuff, but maybe you don't. Anyway, and with this chapter 428, I think it's leading into something really great with 429. I'm very excited to read 429, and it does make me think of like what's going to happen in 430, because it looks like next chapter is going to be the Ochako chapter, maybe some emotional resolution. If there's one thing Horikoshi might do, is he might give some emotional conclusion to Ochako and Izuku, which would be amazing. Also, though, they're teenagers, so I'm not expecting them to get married. But if they did, that'd be nice. But you know, high school romances don't always work out. Then again, they went through this, so they've got like that mutual trauma they're sharing. Well, we'll have to see. It does make me wonder about 430. And we do have that potential villain that's walking around that was introduced in 425, I believe. Now, seeing the pacing on this, I'm really thinking that 430 might end with Izuku extending a hand to this new person, unless that person is somehow his father or something like that. Anyway, I see Izuku extending his hand to this person. We'll have to see what exactly happens here. One thing too, because this is more about celebrating Horikoshi in a way too. Now, if you've been a fan of these videos, and it's been a long time, guys, years, you know that I always say Horikoshi is a very good technical writer. Probably the best technical writer in the current Shonen Jump lineup. With, honestly, the only other person I can really say is up there is Akane Banashi's author, but that's a different kind of thing. That's a character-driven story, so you kind of have to be more competent. But the reason I'm looking at this page is because Horikoshi, he knows how this goes. He knows that one of the most valuable things is foreshadowing where you're going to go. So here you have Shoto. He's the first one. One of the first chapters in this epilogue focused on the Shoto family with the periphery. Then you had Spinner's Scales. What did we get? The Spinner chapter. Then you have this pensive moment of Ochako. What did that indicate? Ochako. And then you have her clutching her stomach, right? Horikoshi is a very smart guy when it comes to this kind of stuff. This is very novelesque in its approach, and you know, all the way till the end of time, I will praise Horikoshi for doing this, because this opens people's minds up to the reality that there are some people that are very good and very meticulous in their planning, and then there's some people that just do things as it comes to their mind, right? There's pantsers versus plotters. That's how you describe it when you're writing novels. Those are the two types of writers. Usually, you can look it up. Pantsers versus plotters, if you really want proof of that. Anyway, let's get into the chapter. Talk about it. Yeah, I did 12 minutes, but I think I generally nice review here. The first chapter is, the first page is just working off of what we got last time. Now, this is one of those things, if I got into super hardcore editor mode, and I do work as an editor, so I do know this. Anyway, if you go into super hardcore editor mode and you have like a word count limit or something like that, in Horikoshi's case, he has a page limit. I'd really have to think about, like, is it really worth it to bring a bunch of nobodies and have them occupy so much pages? Like, the factors that you have to go in here is that, well, you get to have these kids celebrate your characters. So that might feel good if you're a fan of Bakugo and Shoto. Heck, maybe you like seeing them hide behind Ida like a certain commenter Kayla does. So, you know, you kind of have to play that game of like, is this valuable content? But if the author doesn't have any valuable content, otherwise, which I think Horikoshi has run out of valuable content to talk about because he started repeating the stuff with the Endeavor family, I would say, okay, yeah, no, like if you got nothing else to do and we do have to fill these pages, I guess, yeah, sure, go for it, right? I'm just like, I personally wouldn't do this in novel format. It's just complicated because having a factor where people celebrate your characters is usually good. You know, it depends on the context of the story, but I feel like here, because of the way this chapter is constructed, I mean, like I kind of wish that there was other stuff happening. Like, but you know, if Horikoshi doesn't have anything else to say, then you know, go be merry. This page also featured Shinzo properly getting into the class dynamics, which was super cute. Now, along with this, you have a moment where someone says that Izuku gave him a lot of courage. I think that was actually a very cute moment, and in a lot of ways, I think that was worthwhile. So if you say that this little bit with the students is a setup to get Izuku's admirer out there, I would agree with you. I would agree with you. Like, you know, it's always a multifaceted problem when it comes to like thinking about like what you have to cut out if you need to reach a word count limit. But mind you, the whole question of like cutting things out only really matters if you have a word count limit or you need to fill pages. Anyway, on the next page is Izuku talking about Spinner, and then you have Ochako here too. So one of the big things to keep in mind here is that Horikoshi is very aggressive about the idea that Ochako and Izuku are in the same boat. And I think that you're going to see that as we go into 429. They have been in this situation since before the final battle started, and that's where we are here. If anything, Horikoshi made a very good choice giving Ochako so many pensive stares, because it just really did set up that we were going into something strange here. Okay, so we are moving on here. I'm just very quickly going to talk about Aizawa, because I just think this is just bad teaching, but Aizawa is not a good teacher, so this makes sense. Pretty much saying that people want to have interviews. There's a request for class 2A, and Aizawa is saying that, well, you know, I'm going to prioritize the ones that don't want to do the interview. But I'm thinking, like, I think the most responsible thing to do, or the thing that shows that you care the most, is as a teacher, you go and you check with the kids that you are pretty sure are going to be interested in talking about whatever they experienced. Right? Because you don't want these guys' story to just be drowned out. Mineta wasn't doing anything in the limelight. Like, what's more inspiring? Izuku talking, who is like super powerful, or Mineta, an absolute weakling, going into the final battle, just his one contribution is lying on the floor in that final battle. What's more inspiring to the regular person? Izuku or Mineta? In terms of like, you know, the power standing, right? So this, it like rubs me the wrong way, because like if there's a thing where like, oh, the interviewers only want the full class, which would be strange. That would be incredibly strange, because they would probably want to take anyone they could get. I think that like the most responsible thing to do is to actually go through an individualized approach and pick out which students really want to get some opportunity here. They're working really hard. If they want to talk, they can talk, right? Or like, you know, that's a minor gripe. It's a conversation point. But I think the majority of people would agree with that, because I'm pretty sure we've all been through school. I'm pretty sure you've never enjoyed being lumped into the rest of your class, or for whatever reason, when just a teacher taking the time to ask you specifically if you want to do something. Like, I'm sure we've all wanted at some point in our lives that level of individualized approach. On this page, one thing I do want to point out here is I like, again, how consistent Horikoshi is with showing Izuku being pensive. It really adds so much to Izuku, just because it shows that he's really thinking about shit. So over here, we see little Izuku. He's using up the last bits of his one for all power to help out. That's nice. Now, me personally, I really hope that Izuku has the All Might vestige in him, because the All Might vestige wasn't in the final punch. I hope that they pull some kind of thing where like, oh yeah, All Might, it really became his quirk, therefore he stays with Izuku and he is able to continue accumulating strength. At least he has All Might power. He doesn't have the strength of 9 people, but he has All Might strength and his combined together. That puts him above average. That'd be really neat. So I'm kind of hoping for that for Izuku, because like if this series ends with Izuku dressed up as a police officer and quirkless, whoa, bro. I mean, humble. It would go back to what All Might said at the beginning about the police being great people. But wow, I Poor Izuku. He went through this whole journey just to realize he could have just been a civil servant. The next point that I'm interested in is that Edgeshot pretty much permanently disfigured himself, but he's coming back. So we were completely able to annihilate the potential of Edgeshot dying, and now we're here. Great. You know what? This is the perfect ending. I never expected Edgeshot to die. We also have Ochako helping out, and it's nice to see everyone together. Now here we have this little moment where people are saying, they're voicing their appreciation to Izuku. I gotta say, one of the odder things about the epilogue is how immediate it is. Like, usually you give it some more time, but we're seeing the direct aftermath, which, interesting challenge. Honestly, I feel like it's a little bit harder to like work in these kind of epilogues because not a lot of change has actually been happening. One of the worst things about change is that initially it'll look very good, but the problem is, can change be maintained for 20 years, right? Because people fall back to their old habits. So that's why in these kind of situations, these kind of epilogues can be a little bit bleaker, just because you have no promise that there's going to be a fundamental change other than looking at the author's style and saying, well, it's Horikoshi, so it's probably going to hold at least for 50 years or something like that. But this panel is one of those panels that really makes you think, like, Horikoshi cares a lot about this world. He cares about this world state that, yo, we're going to be trying to do something different. We're inspired by you. We want to make the world a better place. And ultimately, when you look at the overall story about, like, villains being left behind, or people that become villains being left behind, it's like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense that he would focus a lot on the world around the characters and not just the characters themselves. Although, I would have loved that we focused more on the characters and, you know, how they felt about Midnight dying and all that kind of stuff. But, you know, what can you really do? Anyway, after that, we have the return of the new Class 1A, and they've just come over to help. So this is just showing that they are good people. Again, you know, if you remove them from the chapter, you functionally change nothing. You still have the praises being given to our characters through the civilians they're helping. It's just a nice, heartwarming feeling, but it's, again, one of those things that contributes to the idea that Horikoshi cares a lot about the world. Anyway, after that, we have more pensive stares from Ochako, and we're pretty much moving into the final situation here. I do want to say that Izuku just got some really good shots in this chapter, and I think this shot is probably one of the best ones for Izuku. Just him seeing Ochako there and seeing something weird. I don't know what Horikoshi did, but I think his approach to this little romance thing going on right now, I think it's a lot better than usual. This is good. This is some good stuff. Both of these guys are traumatized, and they're like finding, like, this is the moment where I think Izuku sees a little bit of himself inside of Ochako, you know? Anyway, here you have Ochako rationalizing that she should be happy. And I think this is a very mature approach as well. And I think it's ultimately very beautiful. Even the way that the teary eyes are drawn. Very beautiful. Very good. Like, I don't know what else to say other than this is good. Everything makes sense. He was leading up to this moment throughout all the other chapters. Like, props, Horikoshi, props. This is a top tier moment. And, you know, the significance isn't missed on me, right? Ochako comes back to look out to the city, and I'm assuming this is where Izuku and her had their conversation, or was relatively close. I don't think I missed anything about that. They don't mention anything about Troy here. But yeah, no, like, that's probably why Izuku could find her, because this is the place that's pretty close to where they had their last big chat before the thing. Anyway, this is great. This is good stuff, man. Top tier. I feel like we're going to have some really good emotional talk. I'm kind of wondering if we're going to end up in the sky to like mimic the picture from the exhibition. That'd be pretty neat. I'm excited. I want to see if these two are going to be able to talk to each other. Because like right now, they're each other's best friend in this situation. They both care about the villains that they put down. And this is probably a good way for them to talk about it. Like, Izuku's the one person that will tell her, don't feel sad. Or don't feel bad that you feel sad for Toga. Right? He's the one person that would let her, because apparently Hero Academia doesn't have any therapy heroes, so Izuku has to come in and be the real hero for everyone else. Anyway, this is good. Good stuff. This is just the part that makes me really think that Hero Academia is going to end with Izuku extending a hand to this strange mystery person, but we'll have to see. Overall, Hero Academia chapter 428, good stuff. I think the Izuku that is coming out of this war is going to be significantly more sophisticated than the Izuku before the war, because this kid is taking all his time to think about the things that he's encountering. He is so pensive the whole way throughout, as is Ochako, in hiding that she was being bothered by something. Nah, it's really good. This is top tier storytelling in this regard when it comes to Izuku Ochako. And you know, when you look at this and you compare it to like the Class 1A segment, that like the disparity in the general execution of it is really what makes this feel so much more overwhelmingly good. And it makes the other feel like it might just be an afterthought. Anyway, guys, let me know what you thought down below. Until next time, I also will be putting up a video. I'm going to very quickly go through an interview that Horikoshi did. So keep an eye out for that, because it's always nice to know what these authors are thinking about their own work and about their work environment, I guess. Anyway, let me know what you thought down below. And until next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.